Doesn't Matter. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Posley. I'm excited to have you guys here with us once again. And let me just take this opportunity to tell you all how much I really appreciate your viewership. Our numbers have gone up even throughout this pandemic season, which means you are tuning in, you have more time to tune in, and you are choosing to tune in, include us in your more online social media time. So thank you. Also, I'm asking you to hit share, because you're going to be blessed today. We have a great success story and a brother who's not just successful, but he's giving back to a brother so that he can help them accomplish in their lives what he has accomplished in his. So I'm going to be introducing him and when we go into our sociological and theological moment. But until then, I want to remind you about my book, More Than Icons and Images, Uncovering the Hidden Protest Narrative of the Black American Athlete in the 21st Century. I am amazed that the book sales are happening in this pandemic season, more so even before the season. So thank you for that. I also want to ask you to stay tuned to something I'm doing with a young lady who's a psychotherapist named Kamish Nunley. And we have started something called First Shepherds. It's a ministry that's specifically designed to come alongside pastors who are struggling emotionally and mentally with the difficulties and the drudgery that can be in leading people, black, white, whatever the case, it can be rough. So her name is Kamish Nunley. Pay attention to my Facebook page or Kamish Speaks, her Facebook page, and you'll get some information about that maybe for your pastor, if you're a pastor, because after all, we're in this kingdom work together if we've accepted Jesus Christ as our personal Savior. God bless you. You're going to like this show. Hit the share button. You don't want to miss this. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Thanks for tuning in. Before I get into my next guest, my guest here, I want to remind you guys, hit the share button. My goal today, because of what the subject matter is to reach 50 shares. If we're going to talk about some of the violence, some murder, and some of the mayhem happening in our community. And so if you're really with us today, prove it not only by listening, but by hitting share. I really need you to do that, particularly my church family. 50 shares is the number today. Now, today we're going to talk about the African-American culture, black-on-black crime, and the Word of God. The African-American culture, black-on-black crime, and the Word of God. Listen, in the book of Luke chapter number 7, Jesus went into a Gentile region called Nain, and there was a funeral process going on. Death was occurring when Jesus went into the city. A young man, the only son of a mother who was a widow. So the boy's father was deceased, and now he has died and left his mother to be the only to fend for herself. Jesus intentionally goes into this region to stop the death process. And that's what I want to talk about today. It is no secret that we are having trouble with black-on-black crime and murder, and not just all the murders happening in our city. These historic numbers are not simply from black-on-black crime. Let me make that clear. But what I'm doing as a black pastor, me and my guest today, I'll introduce in a second, are confronting what we can do with our community. And so Jesus in this text tells us he has a remedy when death is rolling like this. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that happened in this text. And I've invited one of my longtime friends here with me today to help me discuss it. He knows about it because he's been in the hood and he's gotten out of the hood, and he knows the formula, and I trust him. And so he's here to talk to me about it. I've invited here with me today Brother Kurt Moore. Glad to have you, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Been knowing him since we were teenagers. We went to high school together, and he runs a successful auto detailing company here. And I want to just give him an opportunity, want to give Brother Moore an opportunity to kind of introduce himself, as he's a child of God too. Introduce himself and just tell us a little bit about himself, and then we'll get into the conversation. Kurt, glad to have you.
First off, I'd like to say thank you, Pastor Posley. And
glad to have you, man. My privilege.
really appreciate you inviting me to be a guest on this show today. My name is Kurt Moore, as he said. He gave me a little bit too much credit. I don't look at myself as being anybody that's that great or have done anything great. I've just done what God is the hand He has dealt me, and so to speak, I run with it. Whatever the hand has been dealt. So as he said, I met Pastor Clyde when we was in high school. I think I was a freshman. He was a senior. He played sports. So by me being a freshman, I looked up to him because he was already playing varsity sports and was very good and so forth. Grew up.
Trust him, everybody.
Hey, look, man, he was good. A very good football player and a great basketball player as well. But I grew up in the 46218 area, around 34th and Sherman. Played Little League sports at Forest Manor Baseball Park,
So
played sports at Wheeler's Boys Club, went on to play baseball and basketball at Arlington High School. Also went on to play basketball at a junior college down in Phoenix City, Alabama called Chattahoochee Valley Community College. From there, I came home back to Indianapolis from Alabama and it started being a part of the solution. I was a part of the problem. So I jumped in during the early 90s when the crack epidemic was running wild across our nation. I jumped in head first from the lure of not so much of just selling drugs or the lure of being a thug or being a gangster, so to speak, but the lure of the money. So unfortunately, our mindset, and when I say our, I'm talking about me and a lot of my other buddies, our mindset of capturing the American dream, which is, you know, the apple pie, the big white house with the white picket fence. The only way that we were going to capture this American dream was to do what we had to do as far as selling drugs. It beat out us working a 9-to-5 job, making $8, $9, maybe $10 an hour, and when we could turn around and make hundreds of thousands, maybe even $1 million within a short period of time. Now, from there, of course, there's a price to be paid. As I tell a lot of my students, I run a mentor program called Straight Up Mentoring Foundation. As I tell a lot of students, for every action, there's a reaction. So the reaction to me selling drugs and being in the streets and so forth was, one, I've been shot. Two, I've lost many of my close friends, college roommates, and other buddies, man, to the streets. But three, I also was incarcerated for 13 years and 3 months in federal prison, in which I served time for possession of cocaine, possession of crack cocaine, possession of a firearm, and so forth. So I was sentenced to 211 months, went in 1996 at the age of 27, came home at the age of 40 in the late 2009, early 2010. So of course my life has been affected tremendously about my decisions to be in the streets. Even though I'm 51 years old, I can still relate to a lot of our young brothers that are out here selling drugs, that are out here toting pistols, that are out here involved in a lot of the violence and the foolishness in the streets. I can relate to them, but I also thank God, God has saved my life, that I can come back and try to direct them in a new direction, in a direction that will take them away from going through what I went through, and that's going to the penitentiary or being shot, or Lord forbid that they may be killed. Now, the thing is, Pastor Posley, I think that where we're not understanding as being quote unquote leaders or as being people that are trying to lead or trying to help in this during the pandemic of the coronavirus, but also a pandemic that's been going on long before the corona even started, which is the death of our young African-American men in the inner city, in the city of Indianapolis and abroad across this nation. I think where we're missing the point is one, that we're not able to relate or to gain relationships with our young brothers in the inner city.
You think a crucial part of why it's going on is a lack of relationship, lack of mentoring. And
totally a lack of relationship. And one of the relationships is, we know, as we can see from the majority of, we only make up 13-14% of the country, but we make up 60-some% of the African-American people as a whole, 60-some% of the prison population. So one of the statistics is that, and my pastor, Pastor Gerald K. Webster, always preaches, is the fact that many young men wake up every day without a father in the household, or without
crucial relationship.
Without some male role model in the household. As I speak about on many levels, and I tell people all the time that a young man may go all week without being in the presence of a real man. Yes, they may
Say that again, man.
I said young men.
There are many African-American men. We're focused on African-American men.
No question. Many African-American men can go all week without being in the presence of a real man.
Real man.
And what I mean by that is, yes, they may have school teachers, they may have counselors, they may have even coaches, but how many of those men or any man are actually in their life? How many of those men
on their character, not just scholastic education, but focused on helping them become a man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How many of them are teaching them how to say yes sir and no sir? How many of them are teaching them how to give a firm handshake? How many are teaching them how to be accountable and responsible and so
and
forth?
why be honest?
Exactly.
Why have integrity? What is integrity?
Yeah. And what I found out through running Straight Up Mentoring Foundation and running my business, K Loves Auto Detailing, which we hire many young men that are out of school for summer break and so forth during summertime, what I found out is that a lot of these young men or a lot of these young boys desire that relationship.
Listen, you brought up Straight Up, the Straight Up men's ministry, a youth ministry. We and I have a mutual friend who helps you with that Straight Up movement. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Troy Dumas.
Troy Dumas, man, first and foremost, is like my big brother. Me and his little brother, Phil Dumas, were best friends throughout high school and after high school. My nickname is K-Love, and his nickname was P-Love. So when I returned home from prison, and Troy had just returned home from doing like 27, almost 30 years in the military, total connection, quick connection. So let me give you a little quick glance at how Straight Up Mentoring started. So we were playing ball together, and we were playing in a tournament up at Eastern Star Church, and a gentleman that was running that league, Mr. Cecil Sinkfield, me and him were having a conversation, and I think we had saw on the news where Arlington High School, the school we went to, were on the news, and they needed basketball uniforms. They were lacking funding for uniforms. So we went to the school. At that particular time, the school was just reopening as a high school through IPS, and the principal name was Principal Stan Law, beautiful brother. Well, he met with us during the whole conversation. Quickly, he needed male mentors. He needed more men walking the halls and mentoring these kids.
Presence.
So I asked him, could I tell my story to the whole student body? So he allowed me to do that. Then he told me, he said, man, I need you guys in here on a weekly basis. So I said, man, can you give us your 25 worst boys? So he gave us 25 7th and 8th grade boys, all borderline expulsion. Half of them already had the ankle bracelet on from the juvenile system. Majority of them didn't have a father or a male role model in the house. All of them was basically flunking out of school.
At risk.
At risk. So me, Cecil Sinkfield, and Troy Dumas, within a very short period of time, like 6 or 7 weeks, turned their behavior and their grades around by 70%. And we did that basically just by showing a presence in their life, by bringing on other men from around the community. We even had you come, and we was much blessing to come and speak at one of our camps that we give every spring and every fall, which is Straight Up Mentoring Character Building Camp that we give over at Straight Up Ministries campgrounds. But bringing many men to come in.
Straight Up Ministry has its own campground?
Straight Up Mentoring, which is us, Straight Up Mentoring Foundation, and it's another organization ran by a gentleman named Aaron Wilson and his beautiful wife. They run Straight Up Ministries.
Right.
So they own the campgrounds.
Okay.
So
there's always a place.
Yes.
This is a part, absolutely.
So what we do is we take these young men. Principal Stan Law allows us every fall and every spring to take 100 boys to these campgrounds for an all-day field trip. So when we get to the campgrounds, we bring in pastors like yourself, police officers, coaches, ex-OGs, so to speak, and we have them speak to them about their character, about the importance of getting good grades, about the importance of being accountable and responsible. But with that, we tie into, and Straight Up Ministries is very good at this, we tie into fun and games. We tie into hiking through the woods and doing different activities in the woods. We also tie into playing basketball. We also are taking a lot of these inner city young men that have never been in the woods or never been to a campground in their life, and we allow them to horseback ride. We allow them to ride on canoes in the water.
And understand nature.
Yeah, and do things that they ordinarily fish and so forth that they ordinarily wouldn't have the opportunity to do. But at the same time, while they're having fun, we're sprinkling that good stuff on them. We're sprinkling on them, man. Yo, you need to get back in school. You need to do what's right. You need to pay attention to your parents, pay attention to your teachers and your counselors and so forth. So the camp has been a great success. It's unfortunate because of the COVID-19 that's going on right now that we weren't able to get one this spring, but Lord willing, we'll be able to be back up and rolling this fall, maybe next year this time.
Right.
So yes, it's a beautiful thing, man, and I think what we gain from this is the relationship that I'm talking about, in which men and young men or young boys can have a relationship. So when a young man gets in trouble or gets in a position where he's at a fork in the road and need to make that right choice or that right thought process, that he could call me. Or he could call one of the other mentors. He could call Troy Dumas. He could call Mark Webster, which is on my board and caters our camps. He can even call a few of the women, Ashley Gerfitz or Nicole Edwards or some of these other Yvette Williams. He could call one of these people that we can directly help him make the right choice.
Right.
Or a lot of situations where we have had many donors and many people that have businesses that have donated to the cause, whether it's Pearson Ford with the relationship that I have with them through my business and Auto Credit Builders car sales, or Fritz and Fishers with Mr. Fritz car sales up in Fishers, or whether it's my man Scott Gwynn that owns a clothing store in Castleton Square Mall, or Al, which has been on your show before as well, where Al that owns Al's Modern Clothing that donates suits and ties for prom or graduation. But at the same time, when I take these young boys into his business to get fitted for their suits, that he's able to give them a word of encouragement. He's able to tell them his testimony, his story, which sometimes may tickle their ears to listen and pay attention to add that to their life maybe in the future.
So at its core, it starts with young men. For the young men, it sounds like it starts with relationship,
no question,
and intimacy. But for you, it sounds like it's your expression of Jesus.
Yes.
You mentioned your pastor, because what you are doing is service. And I want you to talk a little bit about, how you came to translate being a child of God, being a kingdom man, to serving young people. What happened with you that made you believe that giving them Jesus this way was the best way to accomplish what you wanted?
First and foremost, I wasn't raised the way I was living my life from that period of time of when I came home from college in the early 90s to the mid 90s when I was incarcerated, in which I gave my life to Christ downtown in that county jail, baptized in that orange jumpsuit. And some people may say, oh, that's just jailhouse religion, but I beg to differ because I haven't turned back since.
Well, you are the evidence that's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
So it's bigger than that.
It's bigger than that. So I knew that I had to make a difference. I knew that when I went in, I asked God to please help me first and foremost finish my education, get my college degree while I'm incarcerated, which he did. But more importantly, teach me who I am.
Look into the camera and let somebody know that you did finish your college degree.
Finish my college degree in business. But also, I asked him to show me who I am as a child of God, who I am as a man and as a black man living in this country. And with that said, man, many doors, even though I served 13 years in prison, but many doors were open that navigated me to teach me who I was as a man and as a child of God and as a black man in this community, and put me on a stage, so to speak, to where I can come out and give back. But more importantly, he opened up a very important door. Right before I was released, I wrote several letters to several who I thought were prominent leaders in the Indianapolis area. And I wrote them these letters and letting them know, first and foremost, I'm very apologetic for the crimes that I committed. I'm very sorry. But with that said, while I was incarcerated, I was helping run the prison ministry in prison. I was also a part of a program in which they were taking us out of prison to schools, to community centers, to talk to kids, to tell our stories, to do some of the same things that I'm doing now. And I want to offer this service to whoever needs me when I get out. So with that said, I went back to my childhood church, which was Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church. I had wrote Pastor Webster. So the first Sunday when I got home and I went and introduced myself to him, he knew exactly who I was. He remembered the letter. And from then on, it's just been, man, the ball has been rolling. So Pastor Webster, through the men's boot camp, in which the men's boot camp acronym is because of others' testimony, Christ answered my prayers. He opened the door for me in order for me to tell my story. And we've flown across the country from New Orleans to D.C. to New York to Vegas, to all across this country, basically allowing me to tell my story. I've even spoken in New Orleans on a national panel with the Koch brothers, and speaking about my transition from incarceration to now being out, being a business owner, and also being the president of a mentor foundation. He's opened the door so that they did a documentary on the men's boot camp and flew us down with Deion Sanders and so forth, and Paul Ryan at that particular time, which was Speaker of that. And Pastor Buster and all them. And they rolled out the red carpet for us to tell our story and speak about some of the things that are going on in the community and how we're combating that with, of course, the Word of God, but also with men's presence in order to try to do away with a lot of the violence and give those young men relationships, but not just young men, old men as well. A lot of men don't understand or think it's about being a man to not tell your story, to not speak up when you're hurting or do these particular things. So
well, that is actually the core expressions of manhood.
No question, no question. So it was definitely a blessing. Pastor Webster has definitely been a blessing unto me. And with that, many doors, like I said, and many relationships is cultivated from that. And one of the great relationships is a relationship even with you. Even sometime when I'm not actually in the room with you or talking with you, but I watch this show and some of the other things. And I watch some of these other shows and things, man, and is definitely moved by what you're doing and try to mimic a lot of those when I'm in the schools, when I'm in Washington High School mentoring, or when I'm mentoring with Coach Don Carlisle over at Ben Davis High School basketball program. And it's been a blessing, man.
Tell me something, man. Thank you so much. Listen, tell me something. What would you say? I want you to look into that camera and if you had a group, let's say you were able to see a group of young African American males who had planned to commit some murders, or even this foolishness that I've heard tell of young men plotting and planning these parties to get back at the police and try to get in the ridiculous shootout, which is suicide with the police. What would look into that camera and tell some young man who's going to see this on share, somebody's going to share it, he's going to run across it. Kurt Moore, from 96 to 2000, talk to that young person and do what you could to help them know why they need your program and why, if they're on a path to do that, they're wrong. Help them.
First and foremost, the risk outweighs the reward. I think where we miss it at as people in general, we never add up or calculate the risk.
The cost, right?
Yeah, the risk of our actions. What Mama always used to tell us when we were growing up, that everything has a price. Now, we may think that that's a monetary price, that's a money price, but it may be a price that's too big for you even to pay. It may be the price of your life. So think about that first and foremost. Yes, there's anger right now. There's been anger since we've been in this country. There's been anger even all the way through the civil rights era. There's been anger even now to where you may not get that job and somebody of lighter hue may end up getting a job over you, even though you were more qualified for that particular job. There's anger because you don't feel like you got the proper education or the proper opportunities to get the proper education. So you take the road over here in order to sell drugs or to pick up a gun and rob somebody or so forth. But what I'm here to tell you is that count the cost, as you just said. Look at what the risk is. The risk is definitely going to outweigh the reward. What are you gaining from the actions that are you planning to do? Oh, so you kill a cop. Okay. You may not live to speak about it, but if you do, you'll live the rest of your life in the penitentiary.
That's right.
I think also we want to take this down even 2 or 3 more steps, and let's speak to the young men that are not the young man that's borderline to go to high school and graduate, or borderline to go to college, or even the young man that may come from a 2-parent home or a home where the one parent has a job and so forth. Let's speak to the young man that has no parents in the household. Let's speak to the young man that's raising himself. Let's speak to the young man that I have some young men that are basically homeless, that's living from house to house, that doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. These, I think, are a lot of the young men that are crying out the most for not only attention, but are crying out for somebody to come into their life and help direct them to a better way.
How do we find them? How do we reach them?
I think we reach them, like I just said before, with relationships. But at the same time, we got to play the hand that's dealt. So
they're in our schools. These kids are in our schools.
They're in our schools every day.
They're in our schools.
Yeah,
sometimes they're distant relatives that we could be doing more to reach out to.
These are the kids that are in the school but not going to class every day. These are the
telling us there's a deeper problem.
These are the kids that the expulsion rate for them is so high it doesn't even make sense. They've been expelled. They've been in trouble. They've been in in-house suspensions, the whole nine. They're at the alternative school, in and out. These are the kids that are just going
and
through
being
the
labeled
process.
as academic problem, but there's really an emotional
problem
that's driving why
question.
they don't have interest in school.
So how do we meet these young men?
Right.
How do we meet them where they're at? First and foremost, I think, and there's no disrespect to you or not even to me, because there are going to be some people that you may reach that I can't reach.
You've said that. That is true.
There's some boardrooms that I can't articulate well enough in order to sit in this boardroom and handle the business.
And be heard.
I heard Bill Gates say one time before that I know computers, I don't know accounting, so I hired the best accountant there is. So in my particular, the way I kind of live my life now, no, I may not be able to go over there and talk on this particular level, but I have enough relationships over here that I can ask someone like yourself to go talk there. In the vice versa, or in the twist side of that, now, you may not know, even though we're both from the hood, we both from the ghetto, but God has put us in a position where we're no longer there. But I may need to get down here and talk to this young man. So I know some young men that has been regenerated, or some young men that have changed their lives, that still have a close relationship or a connection to the gutter or to the hood or to the ghetto that can reach this young man. So we gotta quit being so much that I'm bigger or I'm mightier than thou, or I can handle everything on my own. No, it takes a team, man, and it's a process.
That is so true. It takes us all.
Even with the marching that we did because of the young man that was killed by the police a couple of weeks ago, and
Deshaun Reed.
Mr. Deshaun Reed, and what I looked at, of course, yes, he didn't deserve to die
in that manner,
in that particular manner, no question about it. But let's look a little deeper. When we look at the video, even the video before they actually shot the young man, we saw definitely he was crying out for attention.
Right.
We saw definitely.
To even go Facebook Live in that manner.
It was a young man that was crying out for the help of some brothers that can come together and surround him and shower him with the love and attention and direction. Even with his post, I went through his Facebook page and looked at previous posts. This young man needed us more than we ever could think of.
And there were men on his feed egging him on, pushing him into do it. Hey, turn here, go here, go here.
How do we get to this point in our lives or in this world now that we egg on even more violence? Violence begetting more violence. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So what I'm saying even here, I always say this. I think sometimes God allows a life to be taken so a life can be saved. I think maybe in this particular situation, Mr. Reed's life may have been allowed to be taken so that some of our other youth, but not only them, some of our other men, mentors, coaches, teachers, principals, just a neighbor, can now not be scared of this young man because he has tattoos or gold in his mouth or his pants is sagging. Not be scared because he's carrying around a pistol with a 30 clip hanging out the side of his pocket, but to grab him and shower him with some direction.
That is, man, that's well said. Listen, thank you so much for being here, man.
I appreciate you, brother.
I forgot I was hosting. I went to becoming a student. Listen, man, you know, in this text, Luke chapter 7, Jesus ends up, he touched the barrier, the coffin that was carrying the boy, and when he walked into the name, but when it got time to raise the boy, he spoke to the boy. He spoke the boy awake. And what you are doing is speaking the kind of healing that Jesus speaks to young men to get them to raise. I appreciate you, man.
Yes,
You're
sir.
doing, there's a name kind of situation going on in our city. Young boys are dying every day. But if we keep expressing the love and care that Straight Up Ministry is expressing, continue to express what the work you Kirk Moore and Troy Dumas are doing, and other names, and Pastor Webster are doing, there's no way young men can stay in the plight that they're in if they would just hear what you're saying. Again, I appreciate you being here today. This is Brother Kirk Moore. Tell us real quick where your business is and what you specialize in.
K Love's Auto Detailing, 2260 East 38th Street. That's one block west of Keystone on 38th Street. We specialize in detailing cars in which we shampoo carpet, clean seats, door panels, door jambs, headliner dash, steam clean, dress your motor, wash, claymore, and wax the outside, do buffing and so forth. We're also in the same building with TNT Collision. So if you have any body work or if you have an accident, you can come to us and get your body work, insurance jobs, and so forth. And it's truly a blessing to own this business in the inner city, in the neighborhood that I grew up in this 46218, to provide jobs and be more than just a business that sucks the money or the life out of the community, but more importantly, to pour into. I want to be a pillar in our community. I want to be someone that's there for the community as a whole. We have a community responsibility as business owners to give back to the community. But also with that, also being the president and Troy Dumas being the vice president, and to all my board members, I appreciate you of Straight Up Mentoring Foundation, in which this summer, even though school is technically out right now, we're still mentoring young men, still be holding sports events as soon as they open the city back up, Lord willing, a Dust Bowl, and so forth. So come alongside me. You can find me on Facebook, Kirk Moore, or K Love's Auto Detailing, or Straight Up Mentoring Foundation. You can find me on any of the social media sites. You can go to my website, with Straight Up Mentoring Foundation or K Love's Auto Detailing, and see more about what we're doing in the community.
All right. With that said, we're going to end the day. We thank you so much for tuning in. I told you this is one you're going to want to hit share about. There's a young man that's going to need this. Listen, I say the same thing at the end of every show. I'm going to say it again today. In life, you are always making moves. Why don't you choose to make your moves that matter? I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Posley Jr. God bless you. Hit share. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.